Hello there everybody, and welcome to the next episode of Skogul the Trapper. After last week's major success, we are going to roll the adept tasks again. Without any further ado, here is the list. We have pirate skeletons, vicious squires, ancient scarabs, orc berserkers, some bog raiders, giant spiders, shaper matriarchs, whatever these are, and bone lords. Unlike last week, this week's list seems very doable. I don't think any of these creatures are really out of our reach if we try hard enough. And in the deliveries, we also have some notable items. We have wood capes, which would allow us to hunt as much as we want in Fairest. We have Zaon armors, which would allow us to hunt some lizards if we manage to do all the quests required to enter Zao. We have Draconian Steel, which allows us to hunt Plaguesmiths, and finally there's Fire Axes. Now we've had Fire Axes on the list many times before, but this time they are going to be quite crucial, and you will see why in just a short moment. But first, let's take care of some of the easier tasks. Like last week, we are going to start with the beholders. Like before, there's no item that I really want from those guys, so we are just going to go to the caves in Liberty Bay and get it done. A short and pleasant hunting task later, we are ready to go to the next one. Since we already are in Liberty Bay, I decided to take care of the pirate skeletons. The first place that came to my mind is the same spot that we hunted pirate ghosts at some point. Back then, this cave felt like it was filled to the brim with undead skeletons. Unfortunately, their respawn rate left a lot to be desired, so I spent way more time than I expected in this place. Not to mention the annoying pirate ghosts that couldn't be hurt with anything other than my holy spells. On the bright side, I dropped a lot of stone skin amulets. Not sure if you know, but with the recent update, pretty much every single undead creature has a small chance to drop these, and it seems that they were really keen on dropping those this time. Sometime later, we were all done with the skeletons. My next target, the bog raiders. Of course, now that I have the beautiful demon armor, I don't really need the paladin armor that much. Of course, if I were to get lucky and drop it quickly, I would absolutely wear it, because it's still a huge upgrade getting that +1 to my distance fighting. Despite that, I feel really happy about my demon armor. I don't think I've ever had a chance to really non-ironically wear this thing in any of my playthroughs, so I want to milk this cow as long as I can. And sure enough, having run some laps in Yalahar, I was all done with the bog raiders and no paladin armor inside. Next on the chopping list were the orc berserkers. A normal person would probably go to Orc Fortress or at least Edron to hunt these guys, but since I was in Yalahar already and there's a medium-sized orc encampment in there, I decided to give it a shot. It turned out to be pretty bad, with a very random placement of orcs in weird spots. There were orc berserkers on the walls for some reason, the middle was filled with warriors and spearmen, which were very annoying, and there was a random tent in the middle, with a warlord and 2 berserkers that I did not bother hunting since it was in such close quarters. Nevertheless, it didn't take long for me to complete this one as well. And it's time for the ancient scarabs. I am quite happy about being able to kill more of those if we ever find ourselves in need of access to the tombs. After this, we should have plenty of scarab coins. Of course, there are no exciting drops from this one, we can't hope for any upgrade, so let's skip it and move to the next one. The giant spiders might seem pretty straightforward at first, but I had some extra hidden agenda that I wanted to complete while doing this task. You see, I looked into what the shaper matriarchs are, and it seems that they don't really come in many places. In fact, they are a pretty recent addition to the game, and they seem to only roam in like 4 or 5 spots, all of them related to the Forgotten Knowledge quest. One of these areas, called the Old Masonry, contains not only the matriarchs, but also vicious squires, which were on my task list as well. All I needed in order to unlock it was to first deliver some ancient tomes that I already had from my previous escapades, as well as a number of pelvis bones, 50 to be exact. Of course, I did hunt some skeletons before, and as it turns out, I only had like 6 of them in my depot, so I still needed to get more. The only place that came to my mind when it comes to hunting giant spiders and skeletons at the same time would be the Plains of Havoc. Originally one of the only and best places to hunt giant spiders, it also contains a bunch of random creatures, ranging from minotaurs, cyclops, and of course many options of undead creatures such as the skeletons that we need. There is even a single hunter that we may try to kill in order to drop the deer trophy, which is one of the items that we still need to get before we can unlock Rashid. It was a little bit inconvenient having to avoid giant spiders in the main spot for giant spiders just to be able to kill enough skeletons, but a few hours later I was able to finally do it. With the access to old masonry as good as secured, I was prepared to finish the giant spiders, and so I did. Completing the quest itself isn't all that exciting. All you have to do is go to that weird temple north of Thais that was disgustingly copy-pasted, and then ask an old dude about the death portal. He will then request the 50 pelvis bones, which we have, and then we're good to go. The masonry consists of a few levels. The first level has a lot of vicious squires, necromancers, undead gladiators, and liches, along with renegade knights. None of these pose a huge problem, but in groups they can prove troublesome, so I have to be careful on this one. Level 2 has basically same creatures, but with an addition of vile grandmasters. Not to mention the density increases a little. All in all, it would be a little bit risky for me to get through level 2 and down to level 3, which is the place where the Shaper matriarchs are, along with other Shapers. Basically, I decided to leave them for last. For now, I was just happy being able to complete the vicious squires. You may be wondering, why am I leaving only one task undone? Well, first of all, you only need to complete 8 tasks in order to get the ×2 multiplier, which is probably the best we can get this week. And second, there is this special thing that I wanted to do with the fire axe delivery. But first, let's talk a little bit about our gear. For the longest time I've been looking into an upgrade that we could possibly get for our weapon slot. Ever since we unlocked them, I've been using primarily the enchanted spears, with few cases where I donned the elvish bow when I needed to keep the enemies at larger range. Ultimately, considering the amazing proficiency bonus that regenerates your magicka whenever you kill an enemy, the enchanted spears became my staple. They are cheap, they are only slightly less DPS than an elvish bow, and best of all I get to carry a shield, which always gives me this sense of safety. Sadly, this passive regeneration of magicka that enchanted spears offer, it does become slightly weaker as time goes on. As my enemies become stronger, this 8 to 12 mana regenerated per kill does not really add up to much, considering it takes at least 10 shots in order to kill one of those. We are no longer hard pressed for money. Our recent task of Hydras left us with a pretty comfortable bank balance of over 100,000 GP. In short, we just need a better weapon. With the way that our challenge works, we can't exactly just go and kill whatever creature we want in order to receive an upgrade. And unfortunately, for whatever reason, bow upgrades seem to be mostly locked behind convoluted quests or bosses. And of course, the same thing goes for crossbows. I never really understood why there is a difference between those two weapon types, like they usually have less range, I guess, but I think Sipsov just tried really hard to have different fighting styles for paladins. In any case, I've considered many options, and there doesn't seem to be anything that's quite within reach just yet. I initially planned to just hold on until the first dragon quest begins, because during that quest you get to kill the boss called Galidraza the Frozen, an ice dragon that drops the icicle bow very often. Of course, being able to kill the boss while the event is active is not a guarantee. In fact, the chances are quite low, since there aren't many items that would allow us to hunt her. And ultimately, the icicle bow isn't really that much of an upgrade really. After some deliberation with my friends in the guild, we finally came to a conclusion. There is one creature that I technically maybe could kill, even if with a lot of waste, that would guarantee, of course with a low rate, but nonetheless, an upgrade eventually. Deep below Khazar-dûn you can find this creature called a dire maw, classified in Encyclopedia as an insect. these guys can drop the amazing mycological bow once in every 870 kills on average. A pretty interesting thing to note, they don't seem to drop any gold, but instead they have other valuable drops that they drop pretty commonly that can be sold in any jewelry shop, which is honestly a little bit better. The main problem is that they usually come in groups, along with other dangerous creatures. They hit incredibly hard and are known to kill players that are not prepared. You may be wondering, why am I even going to hunt dire moths? Like, what exactly allows me to hunt them at this time? And it is going to be, of course, the fire axe that I mentioned before. One of the areas that contains dire moths is known as the War Zone 5 task zone. There they seem to live in a cave with deep worms, as well as a weird variant of lost hushers, the Lost Exiles. They share most of the drops, including the fire axe. So, in other words, I am allowed to hunt whatever is in there with them. My first dire moth kill goes incredibly smoothly. As soon as you enter that area, there is this catapult looking thing. And if you just run around it while shooting at the dire moth every time it shows itself around the corner, you can land hits pretty safely while it cannot shoot you back. It would be even better if you could cheese them with some of the hazard fields, but unfortunately they are one of those creatures that walk over anything. Lucky enough, their neighbors, deep worms and lost exiles, cannot walk over fire, so we'll be bringing some firewalls and firebombs to keep ourselves safe. Now that I am watching this recording back, I feel so embarrassed over how janky my method is. I have absolutely perfected it over the next few hours, so just watch. So after this first trial kill, I decided to go kill some more, and of course I got surrounded by two creatures at once and got killed. Frankly, I just underestimated how hard the deep worms can hit. They are pretty slow, so I thought they would be super weak, but alas, they apparently hit even harder than the dire moths. I didn't even have time to heal myself, as you can see. Remember when I mentioned having over 100k in my bank? Well, all that is going to be spent on blessings now. Having no more blessing money, I absolutely was not going to risk the Shaper Matriarchs, and in the end I determined that the best thing to do is to lock in and try to kill the dire moths again. After all, I found a pretty good method, and if I can just figure out how to keep it safe, I wouldn't have to die again. Honestly, what killed me last time really was the fact that I did not throw fire walls. Instead, I did some fire bombs and the deep worm was able to just walk towards me. A proper firewall would completely stop it. And so, ever since then, I would always throw one firewall in front of this ballista right next to a fortification that would completely stop any deep worms from having any hopes of reaching me. Then I would also throw some firewalls around the ballista, so that whenever the dire moth walks towards me, it also has to take some additional damage. There are two spawns of dire moths very close to the fortification, where I can go to lure things safely. There is also one deep worm there, but as it turns out, if you block the way with a firewall and ignore it long enough, it will just sort of slink back into the cave and never show its face again. I will be throwing this defensive firewall nonetheless, because it has one more use that I am going to describe in a moment. Dire moths have a unique way of spawning additional copies of itself. Whenever a dead corpse of a dire moth changes its decay state, so it goes from stage 1 to 2 to 3, it has a small chance, a little bit below 10%, to create a new fresh dire moth. As you can imagine, this is incredibly troublesome. If I just leave the bodies there when I kill the dire moths, there are going to be more spawning right on top of me, as I am probably trying to kite a single one. And we have already seen an example of what happens to me when I get surrounded by more than one of those creatures. Sadly, there is no good way to dispose of them really. I mean, there is, but we are going to ruin it very quickly. At first, I was just throwing the bodies far into the tunnel, hoping that they just would not get lured while I'm fighting a dire moth. This was however never enough. I had no good method of luring just a single dire moth if it happened that an additional one would spawn. I also tested the idea of throwing the dead dire moths down the staircase. However, they can also spawn if you are on another level. which means that every now and then I would just find myself trapped with more than 3 dire maws waiting for me downstairs. I mentioned before that these are the task zones, which means that there are some tasks that are meant to be done in order to receive a special reward called a surprise jar, as well as eventually access to the war zones themselves. One of these tasks requires you to pick up a pesticide created by the gnomes. You can use it on a dead dire maw in order to speed up the decay of the body, bringing it straight to the last stage. There is a chance that doing so will spawn a dire maw anyway, but it is far preferable when I can control when this happens. There is of course a task related to that, where you have to use the pesticide on 20 dire maw corpses. And believe it or not, picking up this task absolutely ruins the pesticide for the player. Once you do the task, you get a notification that you have used it on the 20 corpses and you don't need to do any more. And it doesn't mean you don't need to, it means you cannot. That's right, if you never pick up the task, you can use the pesticide as much as you want. But once you do pick it up, you can only use it 20 times a day, which is absolutely stupid. The reason why I went for the task is the rewards available from the surprise jars. These jars can contain silver and golden tokens, which then in turn can be exchanged for some really good armor and weapons. Of course, I want to eventually collect enough of those tokens to get these items, and I decided now would be as good time to start as any, but due to funky coding by Cipsoft, this basically made the pesticides useless again. This is where I found out the second use for this defensive firewall that I was placing to keep the deepworms out. The dire maws that were spawned from corpses would not have any homing mechanics, but those that naturally respawned in the cave did. So if I ever happened to draw more dire maws than one, due to the special spawn or not only would I see it coming, because a hit splat would appear over the fire even if they were off screen, I could also more or less tell when the homing one would get back to its original spot. All I had to do was watch the server log and wait for the notification that it took some damage to pop out. Couple hundred kills in, I finally got a notable drop. The mushroom backpack, even though it does look pretty cool, absolutely destroyed me. As it turns out, it is twice as rare as the bow. And I saw it very early in the grind, so it made me doubtful of any more luck coming my way anytime soon. The biggest upside is, once I really got things going, I was able to hunt these guys without ever getting hit. I wasn't using any potions in this hunt, only the firewalls to speed up my kills a little, and they dropped some seriously valuable items. Before I knew it, I was already back to 100k that I lost on the blessings when I died, and then I quintupled that amount. That's right, throughout this entire grind, even though I was not able to get the bow in the end, I made so much money that I no longer need to be worried about my future hunts. Having killed exactly 1k dire maws over the weekend, I was completely drained but very happy with my progress. For now, I'll be watching for more excuses to kill dire maws. Even if I don't get lucky anytime soon, the profit and the EXP from hunting them is just insane. But for now, we are going to wrap things up. Thanks so much for watching, as always, and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.